parallel, so they become non-mass. That's a natural state. But under this condition, now they said they are not use high, electromagnetic, strong magnetic field. They said they use a very light level, low voltage electricity, and turn it to a magnetic material, and even in some cases turn it to a permanent magnet. So the methodology is a little different. But I just want to remind people about electricity. Whenever you're passing electricity create a magnetic field, right? So it will serve the same thing as external magnetic field, force them to align. But in this case, so they use electrolyte certain setting up, so make it easier at a very low voltage electricity and convert it to magnetic material. And another important point is the reason they want to do this was because they wanted to achieve, produce cheap, abundant material, cheaper material to make solar cells. Right? And the solar cell works exactly the same thing, as a conducting or semi-conducting material. They use their semi-electromagnetic, magnetic property to convert it to electricity.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you're not surprised, even though the researchers are surprised. This is something in keeping with how you understand the way structures work in nature, right?
That's correct. The reason is at this moment, the physics theory is behind the advance in lab testing and in the laboratory research. So in experimental research is ahead of physical theory. So that's something as a physicist we try to change it.
Yeah, so you're saying physics is behind the actual experimental data that's taking place.
That's correct. Physical theory is way behind, is way outdated, in my opinion.
Well, the way you hear a lot of physicists talk, they say, well, if it wasn't for physics theory, then you wouldn't have any of the things that we're having. But it's
actually, the history demonstrates it's opposite. It always somebody discovers some new phenomenon. That's an experiment and driving the development of theory. So it's a slide backward.
So it's really the chemists and the engineers that are really the forefront of science, right?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. If you're looking back, even at Isaac Newton, they look at the apple falling from the tree, right? That's observation from experiment.
We'll be right back. You're listening to Science and You, which is our Thursday science edition of our program, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host, here with our Chief Science Advisor, world-class physicist, Dr. Yu. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well-informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. The Ted O'Neill Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is responsible for the content of this ad. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the most common cancers in the United States. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup weed killer, you could be entitled to cash compensation. Bayer, the owner of Roundup, will pay more than $10 billion to cancer victims of weed killer Roundup. Call our weed killer cancer hotline now to see if you are entitled to cash compensation. Roundup has been one of the most commonly used herbicides in the U.S. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and exposed to Roundup, call now. Our attorneys have the experience and specialize in fighting for everyday people to get you the compensation you deserve. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup weed killer, even if the loved one has passed away, call 800-605-3017 now to see if you are entitled to compensation. But hurry, time is limited. Call 800-605-3017. 800-605-3017.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Lang, board-certified optometric physician and certified nutritional specialist, host of popular talk show Ask the Doctor. I've researched and developed an amazing new omega-3 product that you'll see incredible results with. It's called Fortify Super Omega-3 Max. I had one of the top Norwegian omega-3 research teams in conjunction with myself and Fortify Vitamins aid in the development of this advanced omega-3. This product is the most potent and purest triglyceride form omega-3 in the United States today. Omega-3 is great for all aspects of your health and well-being, especially in this unprecedented, challenging time. I am giving a 25% discount with promo code RADIO during this viral pandemic. Go to my website, fortify.com. That's Fortifeye. Remember the EYE in Fortify. That's fortify.com. Enter the promo code RADIO to receive the 25% discount.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're doing our Science and You segment that we do every Thursday. And we're here with our physicist friend, Dr. Yu, who joins us now as we continue on these news in the world of science. Here's a topic I want to get your thoughts, published just 3 days ago. Stunning image of Milky Way-like galaxies' X-shaped magnetic field captured in new radio study. A recent experiment saw researchers observe the magnetic fields of a galaxy in the Ursa Major constellation, which was found to be similar to the Milky Way's. And this is in thefirstpost.com. Using radio astronomy instruments, researchers found previously unknown magnetic field structures in the NGC 4217 galaxy, that's a catchy name, suggesting that star formation and star explosion, so-called supernova, are responsible for these visible structures. The researchers proposed that the new map could be applied to the Milky Way, giving scientists a greater insight into the home galaxy. Any thoughts on this, Dr. Yu? Why is the magnetic field of a galaxy somewhat like ours have an X shape to it?
The particular shape, if you look at a galaxy, there's a different type of a galaxy, spiral, elliptical. There's many type of, that's because the magnetic field interaction, some because of different stars. In this case, this is a galaxy.
Right.
So galaxy includes billions, hundreds of billions of stars or star systems, right? So star systems all have a magnetic field interaction. So that's the interaction, the superposition of magnetic field may give you different shape. But the one thing I believe very important, why it is X shape. X shape is symmetric. You have a symmetric axis. That's because magnetic field. Whenever you have a large magnetic field, you always find this north and south aligned axis. Mm-hmm. So that's the main called the spine shape of the bar magnets. Whenever you have a magnetic field, you always can find a dominant in the north-south of axis. And along this axis, the X shape means symmetric, and that's the property of magnetism. When you have an axis, you always have a symmetric. It's called a mirror image of symmetric.
Well, what about
mirror type?
What about the alternative view that the traditional scientists believe that it's or the conventional view that it's gravity, right? Can gravity give symmetry?
Gravity, convention, you talking about gravity. Gravity is only acting between center line of the mass center. It does not have a structure. It does not have a direction. It is just distance between them.
Right. So you're saying...
Yeah, so gravity works. If you use gravity to explain, you completely miss the point.
Wow.
They should not have any, like a particular X shape or oval shape or all kind of, it always have some type of symmetric geometry. Yeah, you will miss that.
Huh. I want to go to another story closer to Earth. This is a story in sciencemagazine.org. It says, dogs may use Earth's magnetic field to take shortcuts. So the story is that dogs are renowned for their world-class noses, but a new study suggests there may have an additional, albeit hidden, sensory talent, a magnetic compass. The sense appears to allow them to use Earth's magnetic field to calculate shortcuts in unfamiliar terrain. The finding is a first in dogs, says Catherine Lohman, a biologist at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who studies magnetoreception and navigation in turtles. She notes that dogs' navigational abilities have been studied much less compared with migratory animals such as birds. It's an insight into how dogs build up their picture of space, adds Richard Holland, a biologist at Bangor University who studies bird navigation. There were already hints that dogs, like many animals and maybe even humans, can perceive Earth's magnetic field. But anyways, any thoughts on this, Dr. Yu?
Oh, yes. This basically emphasizes a long time, human being actually a long time ago, and there's many research papers on this one. This is called a biomagnetic field, biomagnetism. Exists in all biological materials, in the what is it called, the bacteria, in bacterial virus, or in any sea animals, like sharks or all the animals walking underneath, under the bottom of the sea. They all use the magnetic field, navigating and identify, direction. And in this case, I believe the dog have the magnetism, have the sense, magnetic sense determining the direction. I think it's very much just like a human. Human, actually, we are determining direction. We are reference our direction, actually based on the Earth's magnetic field too. One example, I don't know if maybe all of you, all the listeners may have the experience. Normally, you think, my mind is very clear. I know whenever you see something, my mind will point to north, south, or any direction. I will know exactly where it is. However, so when did I find out this is something related to magnetism? Is that when I was sick one day, on the bed, my head is dizzy. I find the earth is turning. I can feel the earth turning, and then I found I completely lost the sense of direction.
Wow.
So what that means? So the human sense of direction, it is based on the human spine, the head and the back and the bottom. They are two different magnetic poles. That means the spine, the human has a magnetic axis. It's a long human spine. That's the geometric center, the vertical center. So that's why when you're sick, the magnetic field is disoriented, disturbed, disoriented. So when your own magnetic sense disoriented, of course you lost the orientation of the external magnetic field. So that's why I believe a dog, just like a human being, just like many biological, biologists study magnetism on biological beings, and find they all have a magnetic field along the symmetric axis, whatever.
Yeah, it's very similar to what Dr. Rupert Sheldrake experimented with. He would have a dog that would know when the owner was coming home, and would come to the window, whether the owner came in her own car, whether the owner came in a friend's car, and whether the owner walked. The dog always knew when she was ready to come home, and it was almost like that dog had a magnetic resonance with that owner's mind or something. And I know that's scary for folks who want to be stuck on old-fashioned science, but I think there's something connected to the magnetic sense that this article points out. What do you think?
That's correct.
Dr. Yu, I appreciate your time. Always a pleasure hearing from you. I know everybody enjoys hearing you. If you have a question for Dr. Yu, you can email us hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com. Thanks again for joining us, Dr. Yu.
You're welcome.
When we continue, we'll hear from our economist friend, Jeff Deist, president of the Mises Institute, where we'll talk about free markets and how they're affected by the pandemic politics going on. So stay tuned for that. Jeff Deist comes up next.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on.
Yes.
The madness of 2020.
No.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point.
You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Congressman John Lewis has been laid to rest after a homegoing celebration at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Former President Obama delivering the eulogy.
I'm here today because I, like so many Americans, owe a great debt to John Lewis.
Former Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton also gave tributes to the civil rights icon. President Trump, who's been trailing in many polls, has suggested delaying the November election, saying he's worried that mail-in voting won't be fair. Only Congress can set the date of an election. Louisiana is seeing the largest daily death tolls from COVID-19 in about 2.5 months. Governor John Bell Edwards.
There's more COVID-19 in Louisiana and in every community across Louisiana than at any point up to now.
One of the latest victims of the virus, former Republican presidential candidate Herman Cain. A dismal GDP report sent stocks mostly lower today, the Dow down more than 200 points. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. Happy to be here. We're live. And now we're joined by our friend from Auburn, Alabama. He's the president of the Mises Institute, Mises.org, which teaches all about free markets, capital, savings, money, price, all those things, supply and demand, that are fundamental to your economic well-being. How to understand markets so that you're not caught being led around by your nose by folks like Alan Greenspan telling you that the housing market will go up forever. If you listen to folks like the Mises Institute, as some did, then you're not going to be so caught by these booms, bust cycles that we go through based on the Federal Reserve System. But joining us now is Jeff Deist, who's here to sort out the news with us today. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing great, David. How are you?
I'm doing well, too. And it's great to have you on again. And I want folks to know, if you're listening in the Orlando or Tampa Bay area, we've got an event that Jeff's going to be doing here, but we want to give out the date just so people can keep it earmarked. When are you coming to Orlando? We're going to talk about it a little bit more, but just set the table.
We are coming to Orlando at the end of August, as we pretty much do every year. We in previous years, we've met at the University of Central Florida, which has a nice little conference room. But like a lot of colleges, they are up in the air about their schedule and their buildings this fall. So we're going to meet at a different event center on August 29th, which is a Saturday in Orlando. We're looking at an event hosting center that is in Winter Park, but that's not determined yet. So I apologize for not having the venue, but we do have the date of August 29th in the morning on a Saturday.
Well, I just want to keep that out there for folks who have gotten used to listening to you. If maybe they're in Tampa or Orlando or Central Florida, maybe they're on Space Coast, wherever you're listening, you might want to come out and check out this Mises event with Jeff Deist speaking. We'll let you know more details, just letting you know, keep that bookmarked at the end of this month coming up at the end of August. But I wanted to switch to you folks to first about the passing of Herman Cain. You know, we just heard the news that Herman Cain passed away. Any thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, that's too bad. He's a nice guy. I did get a chance to meet him once in 2012 on the campaign trail when he was running for president, shook his hand. Really a sweet guy, big, physically imposing guy. Actually, always wore the fedora. But, more importantly, I think his death will probably be politicized. He's alleged to have died from COVID complications. I don't know if that means with COVID in his system and other complications. I know he had been a cancer survivor in the past several years ago, and I don't know exactly why he died. We all die of something, but the idea that people are immediately rushing to accept the media story that he died of COVID. Let's not forget that the chemotherapy he went through for cancer weakens the immune system generally. So he may, unfortunately, have been in a condition where a virus presented a bigger health threat to him than it does the rest of us. But it's too bad. A very nice guy, and I think the country needs more people like him right now. People who, although they were seen as firmly on one side of the aisle, didn't engender the kind of hatred that seems to be so prevalent today. Right. Yeah. It's certainly something we need more of, folks who are not so petty and nasty over every little thing. I want to get your take also that they're planning on issuing more COVID bucks. They're going to print more money, right? And they're going to give everybody new checks. It looks like we don't know how much. Is that going to be a big success for us, Jeff? That's frightening, because what's happened here is we don't yet have or understand the full depth of this economic crisis we're in. And it is a crisis. It's a depression, really. If you look at the second quarter GDP numbers, which were just released yesterday, we're down year over year versus the same quarter last year, so something like 37%. So that's shocking. And when you have a couple of quarters in a row with this kind of decline in GDP, that really qualifies as an economic depression. But the problem here is that we have this artificial sense of how things are, because an awful lot of people are getting either money indirectly through the Federal Reserve and all of its stimulus programs, which are buying up all kinds of corporate debt and other kinds of assets from banks. But then individuals, many of them are getting relief checks on top of their state unemployment, an extra $600 a month from the federal government. And so that's $600 a week, $2,400 a month. So, so far, a lot of people think that things are still a little bit normal in terms of you can still get groceries and gas and your ATM card works and all that sort of thing. But I fear that the longer we stretch this out, I mean, we're producing money, but we're not producing goods and services. So that's going to create an imbalance when you have more and more money being created and fewer goods and services. I mean, that's a recipe for inflation, among other things. But more importantly, it's blinding us to how bad this is. It's sort of like the aftermath of a hurricane, where a hurricane has come through, and it's a hurricane that's taking its time. But we're not yet allowed to go back into our neighborhood and assess the damage. Okay, that's what's happening right now. Now, here's a question. This may be naive, but I just want to know: is it because you guys at the Mises Institute are famous for teaching the boom bust cycle and how it actually works, how it's based on exactly what we're doing, which is
printing money out of thin air, creating credit, handing it to cronies on Wall Street, and then handing out crumbs to the masses. And it creates this overheated malinvestment that creates a bust. And obviously this pandemic has accelerated that greatly. Now, is it possible, and I know I'm being a little wild-eyed here when I say, if we could have nuclear fusion and all these kind of radical breakthroughs, I'm trying to look at hopeful things that we can work together as a society to achieve. We used to be able to have big projects where we could go to the moon and we could do great things. And I'm trying to kind of, have that hope in mind to work towards. Is it possible that we could have a contraction, but it wouldn't be as painful if we had radical wealth generating innovations like that, like radical clean energy, too cheap to meter, that really doesn't require government subsidy to make it cheap?
Yes, I do think it's possible, and frankly, it's something we ought to be hoping for, because at this point, we are on the cusp potentially of something far worse than the recession of 2007, 2008, which lasted well into the 2010s, and that was a scary time for a lot of people. So imagine something worse than that, on top of all the civil unrest we've been having with Black Lives Matter and COVID, the maskers versus the non-maskers, and all that. So this is no joke. We have to be thinking very soberly about where we are, and of course, the cheapest, cleanest form of abundant energy we've got out there is nuclear.
Right.
And that, unfortunately, in the minds of many environmentalists and people on the left, is just an absolute non-starter, because they're so worried about the radioactive waste. But if you want to look at what's actually a forward-thinking, cheap, clean form of energy, that's it. Nuclear energy works, unlike solar and wind and hydro and all these other things that have been tried. So the idea that we could have, hopefully, a faster economic rebound because of technology and because of innovation and because entrepreneurial people hook up things that make us all wealthier, I think is absolutely valid. What I fear, though, is it'll be done through government. It'll be done through the state, which means it'll be done with a lot of blunt force, with taxes, with heavy-handed regulations, and with some sort of centrally directed mechanism. And we saw this during the Great Depression. We saw the creation of things like the National Recovery Act, which attempted to almost wholesale run the economy. We saw things like the Tennessee Valley Authority, which created vast public works programs. We saw things, but those are always inefficient, always politicized. They've always got cronyist deals behind them. There's always politicking behind who gets the contracts and what state they occur in, and politicians scratching each other's backs and that sort of thing. So we much like after World War I, we have sort of two choices right now. We can go down the socialist, centrally planned path, or we can go down the capitalist innovation path. And I think where I stand on that.
So it is possible that radical innovation, as difficult as it is, because government continues to, cripple us in our ability to do anything of any value, that we could overcome some of the massive pain that our government has and our central banks have created for us in terms of debt, right? That's a possible thing.
It is possible. I mean, the debt at this point is almost so large that it's become unfathomable. And so the rest of the world knows that we're never really going to pay off all that Treasury debt. And there are economists arguing that we don't have to pay it off, that it's not a problem, that it doesn't matter. That's definitely a school of thought amongst left progressive economists like Paul Krugman and Stephanie Kelton and others. So there's plenty of people who think that. Could we grow our way out of this? Could we innovate our way out of this? It's certainly possible, but it would take a real change in mindset. I mean, that's the starting point. Is right now we've got a mindset that everyone can just stay home, receive a check from government, and the goods and services we need will still show up in stores. Maybe we're not going to concerts and movies and sporting events and traveling and dining out the way we're used to, but short of that, things are kind of normal, and that can't last. We have to understand that can't last with everybody staying at home. So the first thing we have to do is get over our I think, unfounded fears of this coronavirus, get people back to work, and just assessing the damages, seeing where we are. That's the starting point.
And do you think from a productivity standpoint, in terms of making stuff again, short of the big revolutionary innovations that I'm hungering for and hoping for, just making stuff again, a lot of folks on the right want to have tariffs, tariff to make it harder for, to make it easier for Americans to make stuff again and produce stuff. Do you like the idea of a compromise on the right that says, hey, all right, let's get rid of income tax and corporate income tax, and then we can replace those with tariffs? Would that be an economic better place to be?
Well, it would be. I'm not sure that's on Joe Biden's agenda for 2021 or AOC's agenda for 2021. So that's, politically it's probably a non-starter. But yeah, I think that would probably be a good compromise. I don't believe in tariffs or agree with them, but I think as opposed to an income tax, they'd certainly be an improvement. And of course, prior to 1913, we funded this country's government operations, for well over 100 years using tariffs. So there is historical precedent for this. It's just the reason we don't build things in America is because it became cheaper to build them somewhere else. And so the argument today is that the world is broken down, and global distribution and supply chains and all these things we thought we could count on, all of a sudden have broken down in the era of COVID, with everyone home and with some countries having a lot of people sick. So that's, it's not so much an economic argument as a sovereignty argument at this point, that amongst those who say we ought to make more of this stuff at home. So, to do that, we have to innovate. We have to make things at home more productively and more cheaply than we have been, because that's really, that is as much as any government policy is why outsourcing happened in the first place.
Right, and it's something that I think there's a broad common sense agreement that if you're going to tax, right, it's better to tax multinational corporations in other countries than tax your own people, right? It'd be better to take that tax burden, get rid of the income tax, corporate income tax, and shift it out to the way the founders had it, so that we can make stuff again and not have to have our fruits of our labor stolen so viciously every year. We'll continue with Jeff Deist of the Mises Institute. Follow him at Jeff Deist on Twitter for more of his commentary about the economy, what's up next, and we'll continue to dive into what we can expect with these continual inflationary policies of the Federal Reserve and government in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
And now, Easy Lift Movers is on the air, reminding all Americans to show support to the brave men and women of our U.S. military. Their bravery and tireless efforts should never go unnoticed. This salute is brought to you by Easy Lift Movers, serving the community with quality and pride. Call the pros today, 813-505-8474. That's 813-505-8474. Also, all troops and veterans will receive a 10% discount. That's Easy Lift Movers, proudly saluting our troops and veterans. They are professionals who care.
Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting your doctor. Discontinuing without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Attention Zantac users. The FDA requested that manufacturers pull Zantac and products containing ranitidine off the market, noting exposure to unacceptable levels of a cancer-causing agent. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with cancer after regular use of Zantac or ranitidine products, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Call Action Legal Group now for a free consultation. Call 866-321-1729. That's 866-321-1729.
Baseball is back, and as always, the name of the game in baseball is to go home and be safe. Well, nobody protects all the pieces of your life like Italiano Insurance. Whether it's your home, car, life, disability, long-term care, Italiano keeps you safe. We can never predict what's going to happen in a baseball game, and we can never predict what's going to happen in life. So call the trusted agents at Italiano and make sure you're covered. Welcome back, Rays and baseball. Call Italiano at 813-877-7799 or go to ItalianoInsurance.com.
Are you tired of high cable TV rates? Sign up for Dish today and get a $500 bonus offer while supplies last. Plus, lock in your price for 2 years guaranteed. Call All-American Dish, your Dish authorized retailer now.
800-818-3967. 800-818-3967. That's 800-818-3967. Offers require credit qualification, 24-month commitment, early termination fee, and e-auto pay. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're talking about the economy tonight here with the president of the Mises Institute, which is one of the most respected groups analyzing markets and the economy in America, Jeff Deist. You can follow him at Jeff Deist on Twitter. And Jeff, you know, I saw a headline from CBS News saying, man, gold is rallying and it's a mystery as to why. You know, I'm looking at the gold price today. It's what, 1,957 right now. So, I mean, this is getting pretty high again, and the geniuses at CBS have no clue. Any idea why that is, Jeff?
Well, it's not so much reporting the news as attempting to shade it. They, you know, the powers that be in media and in the economics profession and financial journalism, they don't like gold. They don't like it going up. They don't particularly like the people who invest in gold and buy gold. And the reason for that is that the price of gold is really a referendum on their own monetary and fiscal policies, which of course they promote, which at the moment is Congress spending money it doesn't have and the Fed creating money that no one has earned. And so really the price of gold is not going up so much as the value of the dollar as weighed against gold is going down. And so the dollar can fluctuate and against other currencies in all kinds of ways because other central banks are doing their own mischievous acts. But when it comes to gold, it tends to be more fixed in a canary in a coal mine. So the reason they like to say, well, gold doesn't really have any value other than maybe a little bit of jewelry, and is because they want to ignore history, David, which is basically that gold has never gone to zero. There's never been a time in written human history anyway where gold hasn't been accepted as payment as a form of currency. And so they don't like that because they want to run currency by fiat. They want to just use an executive or a treasury or a central bank to issue and dictate what money is and what it's worth and who has to use it. So gold stands in opposition to that because gold's not issued by any government. It can't simply be created at will. By pressing a button or a printing press. And so its stubborn appeal over thousands and thousands of years, it really irritates governments and central bankers because they almost view it as, a critique of them because gold just won't go away and it won't go to zero. So whenever gold starts to go up precipitously, you get a lot of newbies rushing in and trying to buy it. Not always physical gold, but buying, gold ETFs or gold stocks or gold mining companies, whatever it might be. And so they like to dismiss this. They like to write sort of snarky articles about these Neanderthal gold bugs who want to invest in this, basically what's a shiny rock with no intrinsic value. And so the retort to that, David, is that I would call them Fed bugs. And Fed bugs are people who have almost a faith-like belief in the ability of central bankers to create wealth and prosperity using monetary policy, as though wealth and prosperity doesn't come from the people and their hard work and their productivity. So it's really just part and parcel of what we've come to expect from the world of financial and business journalism, is this dismissive attitude towards gold, which is something that they've tried to kill it so many times they've never successfully been able to put it down. So whenever you see someone being dismissive of gold, I think the question you have to ask yourself is why? Why do they care? What does it matter to them if, in fact, the currencies and policies they advocate are in place, and in effect, then the dollar's great, and there's nothing to worry about? That's my response.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of like gravity or something. They hate nature. They hate things that don't allow them to build their Tower of Babel. That's what they want to be gods, and they don't want to have anything remind them that they're not. And I think that's how gold works for them psychologically and so forth. One of the things that I saw you comment on Twitter today about Donald Trump. The big story they've made is that Donald Trump calls for a delay to the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Mm-hmm. I read the tweet. He said, well, maybe we should do it. I couldn't tell if he was just trying to troll or what, but you said, I wonder if Trump realizes the last thing he should want is another term. Things may get seriously ugly. I mean, what do you think about that whole story?
Well, I think it could get seriously ugly in terms of the economy. I think we could be heading into a Great Depression of sorts. And so who really wants to be president and take the heat and take the blame for that? I think Trump was trolling. And let's not forget that it's the same COVID hysterics, the mask enforcers, mostly, not entirely, but mostly folks on the left who were A-okay with delaying all kinds of primary elections across the country. You know what? They set the example right there. They said it's entirely possible to change the date of an election. So now that they're so desperate to get rid of Trump, the whole time Trump's been in office, they have been floating this idea that the Russians interfered and this and that, and it's all nonsense. And so their line is that Donald Trump was ready to not accept the legitimate outcome of the election had Hillary won. So it was the exact opposite. It turns out that the Hillary Clinton people were the ones who were not willing to accept the clear outcome of an election. And actually, although the number of votes in some of the swing states were the margins were pretty small, this was a pretty overwhelming electoral college victory. I mean, Trump won, not by a landslide, but by a reasonable margin. So it's actually the left that didn't want to accept the outcome of an election. So that's why I have to chuckle a little bit when I see this.
Yeah, and we have to just wonder where this whole COVID political hostage thing is going to go, because they always change their narrative and they shout down any doctor. And that's the thing that really ticks me off the most, Jeff, about the leftist media and their bullies on social media, the Facebook and YouTube giants, is that they talk a big game about being all about inequity and we got to solve equity, and they love using those little fancy terms and problematic. They love those words. But then when some doctor says, hey, I'm using Z-Pak and hydroxy and zinc, and I'm actually treating real people, nobody's died, they shout them down. And I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong with you guys? You guys love only patented medicine that government can give obscene profits for a few. So I just call them what they are, corporate communists. They want corporate obscene profits for a few and communist crumbs for the rest of us, right? That's what they're doing.
Well, if this drug does work, or even if it just works for a few people or helps or does little harm, it's apparently very, very inexpensive per pill, and I think it's in generic form now, which I think that's part of what's going on here, is that a lot of pharmaceutical companies would like to vie for some kind of vaccine which would earn them many, many billions of dollars. So I understand that. It's perverse, and I'm not saying people don't want COVID to be go away or be cured or whatever, but there are perverse incentives in our system of drug approval and patents and all that. We just have to accept that. It's not a healthy situation where a particular company will get rich. But look, they don't want us to have cheap and easy prescriptions and solutions to this. They don't want to talk about actually boosting our immune systems. They just want to talk about masks and distancing and some far-off vaccine.
Yeah, and we're going to have to just cut through the noise and confusion, because corporate communism is not going to win. It's the old ideas of the past, and folks like you, Jeff Deist, are fighting the message and speaking out for freedom, and how it's the middle class, it's the poor, forgotten man and woman that we need to rally behind and really give some hope, and let's give some rallying for the protection of the little guy. I appreciate your time, Jeff. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. And we want people to go check out your work at Mises.org, and we look forward to you coming to Florida soon.
Thank you.
And folks, that's another edition of A Neighbor's Choice in the books. Remember, if you want to contact us, you can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.